All right, so we got the S21 FE versus the S25 FE. So is this a good upgrade? Should you make this upgrade? I know a lot of people are holding on to their S21 FE. It still has the Android 16 update, so that'll be pretty exciting when that comes out. But let's go ahead and talk about all of the upgrades here. So the first thing that kind of stands out is going to be the size. The FE phones have gotten way bigger with the S24 FE and the 25 FE. And also this phone weighs a little bit more at 190 grams versus the S21. It actually weighs 177 grams and it's noticeably, lighter here. We do have a plastic back on the S21, but this phone has never come off as feeling cheap to me at all. It's very comfortable to hold, but of course you have a more premium design on the S25 FE now. It is a full glass and metal phone here, and as you guys can see, I think the camera rings and the overall camera design looks really nice this year on the S25 FE. It's got very slim camera rings, and you have that bump, which I also really like. I liked it at the time, and then Samsung got rid of it. But I always thought it was a nice design, and the S21 FE has a lot of really nice colors as well too. But besides that, they're both IP68 dust and water resistant, and that's pretty much it for the hardware. Just note that it's a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger is going to be the biggest distinction here for sure. All right, guys, let's talk about the displays. The S21 FE has a 6.4-inch dynamic AMOLED panel, 120 Hz HDR10 plus, and then we also have 1200 nits peak brightness. It is 1080p panel, 403 for the PPI. We have a decent screen to body ratio. It's okay at 86.7%, so at the time it looked pretty decent. And then we also have a 6.7-inch display on the S25. It's a dynamic AMOLED display as well, 120 Hz, higher max brightness at 1900 nits, peak brightness, and it's also 1080p with a slightly lower PPI of 385. So I think they need to actually kind of raise the PPI, and it's not to say that it's a super noticeable at this distance. It's really not that noticeable, but when you look at these smaller screens here, you could kind of tell that that it doesn't look as sharp around the icons. Like it looks a little bit cleaner on the S21. So it's just something that I kind of noticed, because when you put a bigger display and then you bring the PPI down, it doesn't look as sharp. But it is a very nice display, and it is noticeably brighter than the S21 FE for sure. Yeah, but besides that, I think the displays are pretty good. Like I said, you get slimmer bezels here on the S25 FE, not by much, but it is 89.2% screen to body ratio. So I think overall it's a decent upgrade color wise. It's not that much different. The S21 is still a little bit more vivid. But besides that, I mean, it's like I said, it's not a crazy upgrade unless you're outdoors a lot. All right, as far as the software goes, we're running One UI 7 on both of these phones here, and it's been pretty nice on the S21 FE. It's been running really smoothly. There are some, a few differences here, but let's talk about these specs. So again, we see an increase in the single core and multi-core score. We have the Snapdragon AAA processor. Not my favorite processor here. It does have kind of like heating issues for heavier users, 100%. And then you also have 128 gigs and 6 gigs of RAM on here. So if you can't really like do a whole bunch of multitasking with that 6 gigs of RAM. But the S21 FE is relatively smooth. It's not like it's laggy or anything. You do have the Exynos 2400, and you also do have 128 gigs and 8 gigs of RAM as well. If we jump into our 3D Mark scores here with our Wildlife Extreme, we can see we're getting very good improvement with the graphics performance here. As you guys can see, the score difference, we're just getting much better frame rates, 14 to 30, 6 to 10. If we start opening apps and stuff like that, let's see, let's exit out all of these. General performance is going to be perfectly fine on the S21 FE. Where this phone kind of has a problem, the S21, is that it can kind of heat up if you're doing like these long gaming sessions, running GPS. It'll take a big hit to the battery life. It's just not that efficient of a processor. So take that into consideration. But as you guys can see, if we're just loading up like this normal stuff, right? Just bouncing in and out of apps, just doing whatever. Like the scrolling is still really smooth with this Android 15 update. it's not like it's laggy. It doesn't feel that much different from the S25 as far as speed and animations go. But like I said, heavier users, I would look towards a Galaxy S25, S24 Plus. Try to find those in the used refurbished marketplace because they're just better optimized for what a lot of power users are trying to do. But if you insist on making this upgrade, like I said, there are improvements, but I'll show you, like, for example, here, we hop into PUBG. So if you hop in PUBG here, like I said, the thing that you'll notice the most with like gaming and just performance in general is that the S25 FE is not, it's not going to heat up nearly as much, and it actually remains pretty cool. They improved the cooling on this phone coming from the S24. And you can see, like, and one of the things here is they both play at like 60 frames still. So the S25 FE is even worse optimization than the S24 FE. That at least plays at 90 frames. So I'm not really sure what's going on. I'm hoping we get an update, but yeah, it is kind of strange. But if you're a gamer, you know, you play a lot of like emulators or just doing like heavier multitasking, more intensive stuff, maybe video rendering, then like I said, I think you'd be better off getting that S24 Plus, S25. But if you do make this upgrade, you'll notice that when you're multitasking and doing a little bit heavier stuff, the heating is not as much, and animation consistency will be much better. Just in general, the performance is just a little bit better. You're not going to see like as many like little animation hiccups and stuff like that. Also, I do want to talk about the software, guys. So you do have some AI features on the S21 FE. Like, we do have the circle to search. If I can get it to work. Okay, we got the circle to search, and we actually do have the updated Gemini, which is extremely useful. This is like the only AI feature I actually use. But you do have the Galaxy AI features here. So you have your call assist and audio eraser and now brief and all that stuff, the interpreter. So if this stuff interests you, it's here. We don't have that on the S21 FE, so you probably, you know, might be interested in that. But yeah, as far as the software goes, you know, that is pretty much it. I'm pretty sure you have yeah, you got DeX support on the S21 FE. That's not new. The fingerprint scanner is not improved at all. You do have optical fingerprint scanners on both, so no real upgrade there. They both work, you know, pretty well, so there's no like issue there. So let's go ahead and talk about the speakers. We're at max volume. Let's start with the S21. Yeah, so there's definitely an improvement with the speakers. You overall have a louder sound on the S25 FE, and it does have a lot more bass. The S21 FE, in comparison, does sound a little bit flat. So I think the speaker upgrade is noticeable for sure if you do make this upgrade. So one of the main reasons a lot of people upgrade is the cameras. So hopefully we see a significant camera improvement here. Let's talk about these specs real quick. We have a 12 megapixel standard on the S21 FE. 8 megapixel telephoto, 3x optical. We get up to 30 times max zoom. We also have a 12 megapixel ultra wide. We shoot in 4K 60. We have a 32 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 4K 60. The S25 FE has a 50 megapixel standard. It has an 8 megapixel telephoto, also 3x or 30 times max. And then we have a 12 megapixel ultra wide that shoots in 8K 30. Now we do have a 12 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. The battery upgrade, I think, is noticeable, and you get much better standby time and much better screen on time with the S25 FE. This is due to a slightly bigger battery and, again, more efficient chipset than the AAA processor. You have a 4900 milliamp hour battery versus the 4500 milliamp hour battery on the S21. And then we have increased charging speeds. So we're going from 25 watts on the S21 to 45 watts. So it does charge a little bit quicker. And then we also do have faster wireless charging, 25 watts on the S25 versus the 15 watts on the S21. Both phones have reverse wireless charging as well. I think this is a pretty solid upgrade if you think the cameras are significantly better. If you weren't impressed with the cameras, I would say that, you know, maybe you can hold your S21 FE for another year. It will get the Android 16 update. Because there is a lot to like here. You have an updated design. You have 7 years of updates. I would say the screen is not that big of an upgrade in my opinion. But the CPU, GPU is better, but again, not as well optimized. So that's why I said you could keep your S21 FE, honestly, save up, get an S25 or an S24, something like that. But this is overall a decent upgrade if you find it on a carrier, guys. So it's not a bad upgrade by any means. But it just depends on what you're doing on your phone. So be sure to let me know what you guys think.